Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of a triathlon podcast called Talking Triathlon. My name is Tim Ford, and usually I'm joined by James Bale, but in a few moments, I will be joined by professional triathlete Max Stapley. Max jumped on this week. Jimbo is away, so Max filled in. It might be a slightly short episode this week. Max had to run away about 45 minutes into the chat, but still really good episode. But I thought I'd jump in at the start to do a bit of introduction, get the housekeeping and stuff out of the way. The usual stuff. If you enjoy the podcast, want to support the podcast, head to patreon.com/talking triathlon. You get a bonus monthly podcast, WhatsApp group, Facebook group. We're going to be recording our February bonus episode next week. God knows what we'll talk about. I'm sure we will work it out. But yeah, really good episode with Max coming up. So I will drop the episode with Max in, and then I'll come back afterwards. Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the podcast where they exclusively talk about one thing, and that one thing is triathlon. And this week, to talk triathlon, I have been joined by who has rapidly become one of the most frequent guests on this podcast, although he has the second time now, the co-host, Max Stapley. Max, how you going, mate? Welcome back.
Hi, hello. Thank you for having me again. Yes, very well. How are you?
Good, mate. Thank you. As I sort of said, for filling in for Jimbo this week. James is away this week, so I thought, who best to fill the void? And Max Stapley's name rose to the top of the list very quickly, mate. What's been happening? How's the training? Where are you? You're in Portugal at the moment.
Yeah, I mean everything's kind of really good in the depths of it now, like week 8 or something in Portugal, just kind of monk mode, kind of Groundhog Day-ish type, same shit, different day. But I guess that's just the side that people don't post on Instagram, isn't it? Just getting up and just doing the hours, I guess, and it's what makes you strong throughout the year. So no, we're fortunate to have a really good group, really good coach, really good environment. So yeah, we're just trying to keep it as controlled as possible, because I think if you go too deep at this time of year when you're in a deep block like that, it's really hard to come back out, because the week following is always as voluptuous in terms of volume. So if you go too deep early, you're in trouble.
Can you give us some insight into what's the train like? What's the volume like? Those sort of things.
Yeah, so the first month is always kind of it's kind of that cliche of like you're building kind of an aerobic base. So we did a lot of tempo work, kind of controlled long build runs, controlled long sessions in the water, and then on the bike as well, just fat max, a lot of zone 2 stuff. And then now, as we get closer to racing, especially sprint distance racing with the first leg of the World Series, it's kind of starting to sharpen. So we've added a couple fartleks, some sprint sessions in the water, some higher end intensity on the bike, where the girls are doing some crit sessions as well. So you kind of get that progression over the 9 weeks of kind of taking it from a purely physical kind of engine building work to really sharpening the tools, so to speak, nearer to competition. So no, it's good. I mean, but at the same time, kind of keeping that volume, which is what makes it harder, because the intensity increases and the volume maintains. Because I guess it's kind of easier, I guess, to do big volume when you don't add an intensity. But I guess the big factor is when you're adding in intensity and fatigue, and then you're having to, sleep as much as you can, eat as much as you can, recover the best you can. And sometimes, I missed our slot yesterday. Life just kind of gets in the way, and you're at the shops, or because you forget you do that much training. But then I'd almost say the hardest thing sometimes is doing everything around it. It's, going to the shop, washing the clothes, tidying the house, when you're just absolutely ran down at the end of a 6-hour day. But hey ho, it is what it is. It's not that bad.
Could be sitting in an office filling in Excel spreadsheets
Yeah,
all day. So
exactly.
no, well, look,
Yeah,
as I
yeah.
said, I think probably a good reason to talk about why you guys are training so hard at the moment is that this is, if not the biggest or one of the biggest years in terms of professional triathlon racing in the history of the sport, to be honest. I think that it's almost laughable how much stuff is happening this year. Like it is almost, it's funny kind of that we've sort of always been saying, what's happening with the sport? The sport seems to be on a decline, and suddenly, bang, everything is happening this year, it was exceptional. We've got the Olympics, we've got the T100 series, we've got the Ironman Pro series, we've got the Challenge Family Bonus series, we've got the newly rebranded Super Tri series. Like it's it's funny, like it's fantastic, but you can understand why athletes like yourself and your crew are trained. But that's what I thought we'd talk about today is that, really actually have a look at what this year is, and I suppose talk about how it's going to work and what we think about, how things are going to work around each other. And I think there's a lot to unpack. Again, we have zero plan, as we sort of do on this podcast, but I think it's a good conversation to have, because I think if you ever did stop and like look at everything, you'd probably be weighed down by just how much is happening. But I mean, as an athlete, as a young athlete who, you did your first 70.3 last year with, third fastest time on debut in history, like, the world is your oyster. But like, how do you look at a year like this? Do you worry that, Christ Almighty, like this is the second, first real year of sort of, pro long middle distance racing, and it's this full, like, what's gonna come? Like, what are your thoughts about it?
Oh, I think, first of all, I think it's better to be spoiled for choice, isn't it? So,
Yeah,
in a way, it is good because, myself included, have been saying, oh, the sport's kind of declining. I wish this, and I still kind of share those views for certain aspects of the sport. Like, I haven't backtracked on that, and I'll
yeah.
stand my ground on that. But no, I think it's great. I think it offers opportunity to everyone. You can really pick and choose. But again, I think it's a double-edged sword because you can get yourself caught up in, oh, I'm going to do this, and then all of a sudden your calendar's absolutely rammed, and you're opening yourself up to limited training and most importantly, like, injuries. So I think you've got to be really careful with what you're choosing, really kind of targeted in what you're choosing, because I think if you build an intelligent plan with purpose, I think you can come out the other end, with a really bolstered CV and kind of like a really solid season. So obviously, first and foremost, for short course athletes this year, they'll be targeting kind of the Olympics and Olympic qualification and all the kind of the things that come with that, whether that be playing the game with federations, whether that be hitting selection races, quotas, criteria, et cetera, et cetera. Then on the other hand, you've kind of got the long course middle distance guys that have got that T100 Ironman series and even challenge. So then I guess they're trying to juggle like a good Ironman and like a T100 preparation, because it's funny, T100, you've kind of got guys that are coming from Ironman down to T100 and guys that are coming from short course middle distance. So it's kind of like the Ironman guys are going to have to get faster when the short course guys are going to have to get more endurance. So I'm really intrigued to see how that kind of plays out on all the different courses they've set out this year. And yeah, I think we're in for a good show,
I think
honestly.
I think talking just I think the T100 is probably the obvious place to sort of start a little bit, just because it's it's what we're seeing a lot of. But from that point you've made, right, is we've seen, as you and yourself, you'd be used to this, but you short course guys are used to racing the best of the best several times a year, super competitive, racing where the percentages are so close that if you're off by 0.5%, you're spat out the back and you're not even, you're not even top 10. Long distance, middle distance athletes, certainly we have good fields, but we certainly don't get to see them race each other at the same high standard several times a year. Like, they have to have a big performance at a 70.3 Worlds, or maybe a Oceanside, or a regional champs. But with this T100 series, we're going to have up to 8 races. I think I always get nervous about saying the numbers, but you know, of literal world championship fields racing constantly with a lot on the line. Do you think that that's something that, like, is that a factor that maybe the guys who aren't used to that sort of experience have taken into account? Or do you think we might see some people who maybe, shine a little too brightly at the start of the year, or as you sort of said, they a lot of these people have come out and said they're also going to be racing Kona. Like, are they going to try to cram stuff into the front of you to make sure they got Kona and like maybe get the whole thing wrong? That's the thing that I'm really fascinated by.
Yeah, again, I mean, I think first of all, I'm not privy to individual contract negotiations, so I'm not 100% across what each individual has in their contract with T100. So, but if you just assume that they're racing 80% of the races, either way, even if they do have like a clause that says, "Oh, you don't have to do the whole series," or "Oh, you can miss this one to build to go do your own thing here," regardless, they're going to have to race more than they're used to, most of them. So um, you see it a lot in the ITU. You see guys that kind of, especially from Oceania, they kind of got that reputation of going too hard too early. Like, seeing them on the track in January, you think yourself, "Wolf, like, good luck being there in Europe in July," and a lot of the time it happens. Aussies and Kiwis kind of do have that reputation, apart from Hayden and stuff, for really kind of cranking it too early, and then they're kind of nowhere in the summer, when all the Europeans have kind of taken their time and not raced till maybe mid to late March. So yeah, I think you'll have different dynamics. Obviously, maybe to what extent are the long course coaches kind of ready for that volume of racing, especially when, like I said on Mockery, I see these guys saying, "I'm going to use this to prepare Kona." I'm like, what? Like, I don't really understand. I guess that's from like a business standpoint, but also a physiological standpoint. Like, you got to pick your you got to pick your side type of thing, I guess. And yeah, I think it's going to be a big year. I think, unfortunately, I think some people get it wrong and I will end up maybe in a boot or two. And no, I just hope we see great racing. I think regardless, there's going to be great racing. And I think we're going to see some really good wild cards, obviously, because they've announced their roster and their kind of hot shots. But obviously for each individual event, I'm sure they'll be opening up spots. And, whether that's a Norwegian here or there, or that's another short course star, or, even some people we're not even really thinking of. So I just like to see them mix it up, really. I'd like to see them kind of play with the distance and put it on exciting courses, especially. I think that's what I want to see.
It's interesting you're talking about the wild cards around these races, because I think, yeah, you're definitely right. I mean, I've seen whispers that this Miami race, for example, is going to have up to 11 of them. Like there's already sort of shifting things around who's racing what and who they're going to get into to sort of fill the void. But one of the things I've always quite enjoyed Super League doing, which is probably the closest example from short course, is they'll bring in some wildcards, and they're not always the person you expect, in the sense that we've seen like a Lionel Sanders do the arena games, or we've seen a Cam Worth do a Super League, or Lucy Charles do Super League. And I kind of hope that we see the T100 do that a little bit, probably in the sense that, not that I don't want to say that these people aren't good enough, but they're certainly not athletes who focus on that distance. And the obvious example is Joe. I'd love to see them bring Joe in for a few of those wild cards, just to like see where he's at, or see how a pure, like there's not a more pure Ironman athlete, I think, doing the sport at the moment. Maybe Cam Worth. Like, chuck these guys in. Like, let's see how these guys go. Or, as you said, the real short course novices. Tyler Mizlerchuk, for example. Tyler's a guy I'd love to see them throw in it and do a T100, just to see like where do the dice fall a little bit. I think that's an opportunity that I'd like them to see, because yeah, it's almost like, I mean, when they did the hot shots, I kind of expected them to go more short course. I thought that we'd probably see a lot more short course guys in there, and I'll be honest, I was surprised by some of the wild cards they gave out. I think that it's some of them maybe a missed opportunity to put in somebody really. I'll say it 100. I think Gwen Jorgensen for a female wild card would have been sensational. Like, she's an athlete that I really want to see have a go at middle distance, and maybe the passion's not there, and that's okay. But yeah, I'm curious to see how those wild cards sort of play. But you did say something. This is the next sort of thing I want to talk about. And again, I did listen to last week's episode of Triathlon Mockery. Available wherever you listen to podcasts. Listen, it's a good show. You and Joe in particular, in the last sort of 10 minutes, almost it sounded like I was speaking through you, because I'm really on the same page about this around and I sort of touched. I had a mini rant last week on our show, but about this idea of athletes saying they're going to do T100 series as a prep for Kona, or we've had athletes come out saying that actually I'm going to focus on both. And I look at it, and there's from a contract point of view, I don't want to necessarily cover that so much, but maybe we will. But purely from a performance point of view, like, we're talking about trying to fit at least 3 Ironman races into from April to October, plus the 6 T8 100 races, plus the 2 70.3 races that are required. Obviously, but again, as a pro in the hole at the moment, doing all this volume, how the hell do you think is that possible? Is that physically possible?
I mean, if you're asking me, I'd probably say no. Like, I think that at some point your body, especially over the Ironman distance, is gonna pull the handbrake. Like, I just, the amount of work that's going to take, the amount of impact on the body, time to recover. Obviously we've seen anomalies with Christian and stuff when he did Kona and backed up with World Series and backed up with St. George. But I just think he's, again, like I said in our last show, like, I think he's just a kind of a different human. And I don't know if even he can back that up and up and up and up. And I think, you're not even taking into account the mental aspect of having to travel through all these time zones, do all this training, stay injury free, stay motivated. Like, it just seems a bit much, like, for some people, and credit to them for trying. Like, again,
Yeah.
I'm not going to knock anyone. I'm not going to say don't do it. I'm not going to say they're crazy, but like, wow, I just feel like when I look at those calendars that a few athletes have been posting up, I just think, geez, like, how many time zones, first of all, like, how much travel is that? Like, I remember over the last few years, like, the amount of Kona series you did, people 3-4 weeks out in Kona just preparing that one race. And then you think now, oh no, you'll have already done like 8 or 9 middle to iron distance races, and then you're just gonna like bang out Kona. And I think it's one thing that kind of bounces around my head when I had those chats with Maka in Phuket and MG and stuff, and they say like, you need to give, you need to respect the race, like you need to respect Kona, respect the heat, respect the distance. And yeah, I think Kona's a different beast. Like, there's been complaints about the course and stuff and about the heat, but it is what it is. And like, I think if you're not fully across that and you're not ready for that, you're going to get stung. So I'd hate to see people disappointed by an over optimistic calendar, to put it that way.
We're going to jump around. This is the nature of the show. But you talking about what Chris was saying about Kona. Again, we both know Chris really well. I've worked with Chris for many, many years. And I think talking about Kona is actually something that I do a lot of. Like, whenever I'm with Chris, it inevitably comes up talking about Ironman and Kona. And you're right. This is a guy who struggled to, he was the best in the world, would win every other race he do, but fall to pieces in Kona. It took him, years and years to finally crack the thing and win it. I wonder if we're at a point these days where, because of the improvements of technology, because we're seeing, I guess, like I don't know, and it's not necessarily a bad thing, right? But there's less whims, it's less whimsical now. There's a lot more science, there's a lot more data, there's a lot more technology that maybe, do you think people have stopped respecting that race so much? Do you think that, like, and again, what Gustav did, what Sam Laidlow did, what Christian did, what they've done on that island that year in 2022 was unbelievable, right? Where we had, all these people going under 8 hours, et cetera, et cetera. But do you think that maybe that's what's happening? Like, have we gotten to people going, yeah, kind of wasn't so bad in 2022.
Yeah.
Have they started to maybe underestimate that race and like maybe rose tinted goggles, thinking, well, fucking hell, we're doing so well. Like, maybe Kona isn't that hard. Like, do you think that's a scenario we can see happen this year?
Yeah, look, I think, again, as you've echoed, like, and I've said it before, the sport's moved on in terms of how we train, in terms of how we recover, how we adapt. Obviously, one thing that Chris also bangs on about is those carbon shoes. Like when you used to come back, like you used to come back on a Lee drive and you see these guys in the absolute bin. Like you think back to people hitting the wall, walking, and you don't really tend to see that explosion anymore. And I guess those shoes do, like, from personal experience, do carry you under fatigue, especially under fatigue, because you get that support, you get that spring from the foam, you get that kind of forward lean from the plate. But yeah, I think people kind of, again, it's that thing of like, it's not impossible until someone does it. And then you see Christian do it, you see Gustav do it, and you think, well, maybe I can do that. But what I'm just thinking to myself is, those guys are like unique individuals, and I just wonder whether or not, I mean, maybe I'd be happy to be proven wrong, like, please prove me wrong, like, go out there and do it. But I just think it's a big, big, big demand. And I've done it, even, I've done it not very successfully, where I've gone to like Malibu Super League, then back to Europe, then this. And, like last year I went to Malibu with, I don't know, must have had COVID or something, but I was absolutely cooked in Malibu, flew back to Europe, just couldn't get myself right, and then picked up a lung infection into Neom. And you just see how that travel and that training and that constant cycle of keeping going just eventually catches up with you. And I'm not even racing, and that's not even middle distance racing. That's like short, sharp 50-minute races. So I guess from my point of view, that's what I'm thinking about. I'm thinking my own personal experience. Twice in a row, I've gone to Malibu, got sick. And I think a lot of the Super League athletes will tell you, yeah, man, like, you come off an ITU season, then bang, you bang it to LA, and you're in your bed in the Marriott thinking, oh, I'm absolutely cooked, I can't be asked to go do this race. And then like you come back to Europe, you got a lung infection, you got COVID, you got this, you got that, and it takes you like 6 weeks to fully bounce back, which is kind of what it took me. I only got good for like Miyazaki World Cup, where I kind of salvaged a good result. But I guess my initial skepticism comes from my own personal experience. But again, I'm me, they're them. I wish them the best. Please do it for my entertainment, guys. Like, get out there, rip it, just stay healthy, keep drinking your chocolate milk and stuff. But yeah.
I mean, I travel a lot for work, but I don't race everywhere I go. Like, I don't have that need to. I still always train and stuff, and I try to stay active. But I think last year, or the last years have been really interesting, where I've been, I think 2023, I was in the best form I've ever been in my life. Like, every year I normally go down to the snow mountains in January and do a training camp. And the start of 2023, I went down there and I was, mate, hitting PBs on every single ride, run, everything we did. I was like, fuck, I'm good. And had these big expectations of, sort of elevating where I'd been in the past. And then 2023 started my travel, and it was like Norway. Uh, then I went to, where did I go? Like, I ended up traveling like, 4 months of the year, and my training and consistency just fell completely. And this is a guy who doesn't like doesn't really race everywhere. And I'm thinking, fucking, if I'm struggling to even just train without the added pressure of racing, taper and recovering. And then last year, I first half of last year built up. I got my fitness score on Training Peaks, to nearly 200. Thinking like I am red hot. And then as soon as I started traveling, it just falls. And I
Yeah,
think
yeah,
that's
yeah.
that's a very small example of it. So you magnify that for you guys. And you're right. Like I was in Malibu, I saw everyone. Hayden came in late, he was sick. Henry was sick. Everyone got sick. And yeah, I do think that it's just a different thing that we're not used to seeing. But again, let's not forget the fact that it's also going to be the same group of people at a lot of these races, almost traveling together. Like it is much more like that short course circuit, which is just a dynamic we've never really seen in middle distance. And I think that
Yeah.
there's a lot of stuff that these guys, I mean, look, some of them have come from a short course background. They'll probably love it. I think there's a lot that's going to be, yeah, like I'm just curious to see how the dynamic works in a good way. Like I'm kind of excited to see what happens, and I hope it goes well because I do worry, and I guess why I sort of laugh at the start of this is, it is good to be swallowed for choice, but is it also mean that nothing's actually going to really work?
All
Is it,
through, yeah.
yeah, like is everything? I do have this. I think the concern I have around seeing so many athletes coming out saying, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do this and I'm going to do this is the risk of injury and stuff. But it means, like, are we actually not going to see exciting racing? Are we not going to see, like, uh, yeah, I don't even know there's just,
Oh, what you mean?
yeah.
You mean you don't think you're going to see the best at their best?
Yeah, I think that is a concern where I think we might just see some races. Like, I mean, already I look at that race in Las Vegas and I know that it's not going to be, not that it's not going to be bad because I think we'll get some great wild cards in, but it's not going to be as many of the top guys focusing because we know they're going to be focusing on Kona. Similarly
Yeah,
with
I guess
Ibiza.
that's for me. Like, what I just like the rest of it apart, injuries, travel, all this stuff. Like, at the end of the day, that's just conjecture. Okay, that's just theoretically, from my experience, I think it's not going to work. Blah blah, whatever. Put that to one side. What I cannot fucking get my head around is like how these guys. I haven't seen any girls do it, to be fair, but like how these guys can go on Instagram to their hundreds of thousands of followers and say, "Hey guys, this thing that's just paid me a wad of cash to sign? I'm actually using that as like a session into this race."
Yeah,
For me, as like if I put kind of like my fan hat on, I just think, well, that race is gonna be shit. You know what I
exactly.
mean?
Mate, 100%.
Like
That as a fan,
I,
that's what I think. Yeah,
I just think, well,
definitely.
this guy's just doing a brick. Like, do I want to watch Sam Long do a brick? No. Like, I want to watch Sam Long at 100%. And I just think to myself, oh, you've kind of spoiled it for me a bit. And now I kind of don't know how to feel about the whole flipping series because if some people are just doing it for a cash grab, like I've heard rumors that people like they're going to get their sign on money regardless of whether or not they race. And I'm kind of like, wait, like I thought this was supposed to be like the new step in middle distance triathlon, and like I think it is. I think the potential is there when you see like the excitement and the buzz it's generated. But then on the other hand, what's all this stuff that's kind of going on the side?
This is one where I'm gonna actually like I get I'm quite happy and vocal to sort of give criticism where I think it applies. And I think this is one where the PTO is not at fault, to be honest. And because I feel like the thing that we always forget about the PTO is it's athlete owned. Like the athletes who are members of the PTO own a part of it. So I would assume that like I don't know with the brands that yourself, some of the guys that I work with, like sometimes they're like, where's the buy-in? And that's kind of how the PTO must be. And in fact, I've heard that the PTO are a bit like, shut the fuck up, stop doing this. Like it is a very weird thing because you're 100% right. I'm surprised how many people I've seen come at it. It felt like there was a 2 week period where every day it was a different athlete on the T100 coming out saying T100 is great, but I'm going to use this to focus on Kona. T100 is fantastic. I'm going to use this to focus on Kona. And it's like, guys, shush. And I don't
But
think that's
even if you're doing it, just don't say it.
100%,
Yeah.
mate. 100%. And that's what I mean. Like, I don't think this one, I'm not going to criticize the PTO for this. I'm going to say to the athletes, like, get some buy-in. Like, actually get some buy-in. But I wonder, is it the case that they are also then worried that, oh, well, my sponsors need to know I'm doing a Kona, or like there's this fear that I don't know. Maybe it is this case of people not wanting to pick a side because I think that I've really respected the athletes who just come out and said, "Fuck it, both. I'm doing this." Like Lucy Charles come out saying, "I'm not doing Ironman this year," and she copped shit for it. Joe saying, "Fuck this. I'm doing the Ironman Pro Series." Patrick Lang, "I'm doing the Pro Series." Like I like that. I like to see the athlete actually just come out and say, "This is my focus this year,"
Yeah.
rather than, "Oh, I'm
I
going to
thought
try
what
to do
Lucy's I
everything."
thought what Lucy did was like really, really commendable. And like actually credit to Kate for this, because I remember when it came out and she did that kind of statement, I was like, oh, why is she doing a statement? She doesn't owe it to anyone. But like you realize that like, no, she's actually had the respect to say, no, guys, this is why I'm doing it. This is the decision behind it. Like, respect my decision. And I'm going to commit 100% because I want to, obviously, she wants to take it to Ash and she wants to take it to Paula Finley and she wants to take it to Anne Haug. And she probably knows that she has to be 100% for every one of those races to even be within a shoe-in with those girls. Like, and that's respectable. That's 100% like, wow, okay, well done. Like, you've committed 100% to that. You said, you know what, I'm putting it all on the line. I've won Kona, tick that box. Thank you very much. I respect the race, respect this, but this is what I choose to do. And like, fair play, like,
Yeah.
can't knock it.
And also being quite open about the fact that Nice isn't a course that suits her. And like let's not, we've seen Lucy race short course. She has the talent, but I think was it one of the Super League races she did where she first out of the water, the bike power and stuff is
Malibu.
there. Malibu, yeah. As soon as she gets to transition, she just
Yeah, it's
falls
over.
behind. And you watch her on those tight, and I've said this a lot, isn't the most technical athlete. And so I think, again, you look at a course like Nice, the fucking, like, mate, brutal.
Yeah.
You understand why she's gone, actually, it doesn't suit me. And in order, if I had to put the work in to do that race, I'd have to sacrifice almost my entire season for something that's not even a guarantee. Like, of course, it makes sense, right? And again, I respect the fact that she's just like, yeah, I ain't doing this. And again, it's great that she doesn't have to. It's great that she has opportunities. And that's why I do think, because in order for these things to work, we need buy-in, not just from the fans, but from the athletes. And again, I understand that it's like it's still a test, but yeah, it does just make me go, yeah, like, okay, another one's just sort of going to do everything. And I, I just don't think it's going to work for those guys. And again, I just can't see a scenario where you're going to do I think it's good on paper. And I kind of think we saw it last year, because you spoke about Christian, right? We saw last year that he's human. We saw last year that even he cannot do everything. He
Yeah.
fell to pieces. And again, when he came out and said, I'm going to try to do the test event, and then I'm going to go to Singapore, and then I'm going to go 70.3 worlds, you're like, come on, dude, serious. And then you're like, well, fuck, it's Christian. If anybody can do it, it's Christian. And then we see what happens. He obviously wins the 70. He won. No, he
He
won
won
Singapore. Fantastic. He wanted that tip, but then, fell to pieces. And it's like, even the great man, and again, I'm not being sarcastic, literally one of one of the greatest athletes still in the sport at the moment, who has done more that we never thought possible, is showing that this travel and this load and this attempt to do everything isn't sustainable. And that's why I find it funny when I see athletes, and I will be critical here, who aren't half of Christian Blumenfeld, saying they're going to do it. It's like, I would use a word that, as I'm Australian, I would use a word. I'm not going to use it. But please, come on. What do you who do you think you're fooling? It ain't happening, Chief. You are not going to be able to do this. Hope I'm happy to be proven wrong. But yeah, it's just,
again. Happy to be proven wrong. Please do. Please do. Please do. And it's no knocking anyone. Like, respect to everyone. Happy to be proven wrong though.
even Lionel. Like, I like the fact that Lionel just came
Yeah.
out, because he's an athlete that a lot of people, and I'm surprised actually, because again, I do get frustrated by Lionel's flip-flopping around, but again, I respect. He's like, fuck it, I'm doing the Ironman series. It's all about Kona for me. Yeah, fuck yeah, mate. Good on you. And that's
Yeah.
the last thing I want to touch on, this middle stuff, is we've seen that the fields this year, the women's field in the T100 series is red hot. It's honestly, I can't think of it. Again, maybe Gwen as a wild card where I like, but the men's field is probably a little bit softer. And do you think that this is what we are going to see because of the power of the Big Island, which I'm assuming that the reason is, and we know it, right? A few people want to focus on Kona. Do you think we're going to be in this scenario where every alternate year the fields are different because the women have Kona, then the men have Kona, until Nice grows into the same prestige as Kona has? Do you think that's a byproduct of it?
I mean, I think obviously like Kona has such a kind of a mythical weight to it that people will give that more weight, more, well, not to reuse the word weight, but more importance. But I think
Gravitas.
also what's kind of been neglected, and I see it for me because again, I stepped in a bit to middle distance last year and was kind of made aware of all these points and all this ranking, and Joe's messaging me like, well, if you do this, you can get this. And I'm like, oh, what the hell? And then you kind of realize that like the guys that have been in there early on are kind of locked in. Do you know what I mean? Because they kind of did the PTO events, they got the big points, the platinum events, they got this, they got that. And you think to yourself, holy shit, like to get that amount of points, I'm going to have to do this. And it's like, damn, that's like almost impossible. Whereas I think the women's fields from the start, like the A players raced them. Do you know what I
Mm,
mean?
yeah.
Like the A players, the Anne Haugs, the Ash Generals, the Paula Finleys, they were racing them from the start, the Taylor Nibbs from the start. So I think that's why they're locked in, kind of, they're there. And then the men kind of maybe a bit hesitant, kind of like, oh yeah, I'll do, oh, I want to stick to this, or I want to stick to Ironman, or I want to stick to short course. And now all of a sudden you've got all these guys that made different decisions to stay, whether short, long, medium, whatever. And they're kind of out of the ranking, and they're not where they wanted to be ranked, and they're not, you know, they're not in the top 16 or whatever, the guy, however many guys they selected, and they didn't get a hot shot. So you realize that like the big girls, like the Lucy Charles, she podiumed in Ibiza. Ashley Jenner, we know what she's done. Paula Finley, always been knocking on the door. And how, like, they're all there from the start, whereas the men maybe took a bit longer to warm into it, or some guys went there from the start and had immediate success. And that's why they have the points that they've carried through. But anyway, to give you a long-winded answer, yes, I think Kona has that weight, but I also think the way they've created the points has given priority to the people that were there from the start. And fair play, they race their events, they get the wild card. But also, you look at the women that went there from the start, the big dogs went there from the start, whereas the guys maybe were a bit more kind of all over the place, like, oh, I'll give this one a miss, and they miss out on points, and then 2 years down the track, shit, they don't have the thing. Like I was talking to Martin after Bahrain, and he's like, oh, I need to get these points to get this. And then I'm like, surely you just get a PTO start, you're undefeated. But like, he's like, oh no, because I'm not ranked. And I'm like, oh, okay.
Okay, but on this note, this is something that this is an interesting point because, and again, World Triathlon short course racing is a lot like the Olympic qualification, getting us started at a WTCS race. It's in theory, say with the it's a point system, right? You got to get a certain ranking, you get a start, but then there's discretion. Then there's the federations put. As an athlete who deals in this gray area of short course, this epic system, do you look at that system though and go, well, fuck, at least it's clear. At least it is. Here's the rules. This is the line in the sand. Hit it and you're in. If you don't, okay, things are a bit more gray. But like, do you prefer that approach? Because at least you know what you got to do to.
It's funny you should bring that up, because I had this conversation on the bike with Seth the other day, Seth Ryder, and I said, oh man, they're missing out on loads of guys, like they're missing fucking guys. And he's like, well, they just picked the guys that were ranked. And I kind of was like on my bike, like, oh yeah, they did. Yeah. And then you think to yourself, well, even if it's imperfect in the fact that like the guys that got in early got the slots, but yeah, that was the rule of the game. Like if you're ranked, you get in. And like fair play, because you see stuff all the time in ITU, you think, how the hell, how has that happened? And you realize it's some inside job that like someone's played the game with the Fed and someone hasn't, and someone's kind of hit this shady criteria, or someone hasn't hit this criteria but has previous form or something. And you think to yourself, like, how the fuck is this guy getting a start? Or you think to yourself, how is this guy not going to the Olympics, or this girl not going to the Olympics? And then you realize, oh, it's just kind of insider string pulling. And then you realize, yeah, the PTO, all right, maybe there's a few guys missing, or there's a few guys that you like, guys and girls that you'd like to see, but they weren't there and they didn't get their spot, and bang, fair play.
You want it next year? Do this. Like this is your pathway forward. And
because like when I'm thinking about how I get on, I don't think, oh, I need to suck up to this person or kind of like do this shady race. I just think, no, you need to get the points, pal. Like that's it. To get a contract. Maybe you'll get a wild card if you're lucky, but you're not going to get a contract by just like kind of training in the right place. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, cool. Oh, that's yeah, it's good. It's interesting insight. Let's move away from middle distance and let's talk about short course. Obviously, there's this big race that happens in Paris this year. It's kind of a big deal. It's called the Olympics. Some pretty big names in the sport have won it before, but it is going to rule short course at least until the beginning of August this year. We're in the thick of it now. I think the short course season starts this weekend in Napier, New Zealand. How's the year looking again as a person with a lot more insight than the regular triathlon fan? How does this year look?
What, in terms of just the landscape of short course?
Yeah, like as in, what do you think we're going to see? I
think you'll see the typical stuff, people that are fortunate enough to be pre-selected, fortunate or unfortunate. You can see it both ways. Some people make mistakes. Some people think they need to reinvent the wheel Olympic year. But then you'll see the typical thing where like you got kind of a gray area of like, do I need to hit this criteria, or the US have got this criteria on this race, the UK have got this on this race, France have got this on this race. And then you got the other people that are going for the new flag that'll kind of be hopscotching around the world, getting these shady points at these shady races. And you just think to yourself, man, this is so complicated. Then you'll watch the Olympics and think, how the hell did they get there? And then and it'll be the same thing, the same rigmarole, it's the same as in Tokyo, the same as in Rio. Rules haven't changed, old habits die hard. And I think that's what you'll see. Like, unfortunately, I can't bring the listeners any new insights into what's going to happen, because it would just be the same old, because the system hasn't changed and the Olympic points work the same, literally the same. So you'll see that. You'll see a combination of people that are assured to go. You'll see people that are trying to qualify. You'll see people that are trying to satisfy federations, and you'll see people that are chasing points. And all that makes for a really confusing build-up, a really kind of unclear thing between the Conti Cup new flag, the World Cup points, the WTCS criteria. You just think to yourself, man, I honestly, I can't understand it myself, and I think, man, if I was a fan trying to follow this, it would just it would be impossible to follow this.
I've given up, honestly. I just just
it's because every time you think you know it, something else comes out and you just think, where the fuck did that come from?
I did see that they finally decided to let us know that the arena games that are no longer called the arena games are happening this year. And again, I have this, again, I'm quite vocal, and I'm not going to expect you to jump on this, but I'm always quite vocal about how I think World Triathlon is really making triathlon quite bad at the moment. And for a person who's quite vocal about needing to see less World Triathlon involvement or triathlon, it's just, I can't not see it's like every time there's a PTO announcement, it's with World Triathlon. Now I've got the arena games, it's World Triathlon. I'm like, I can't escape these motherfuckers. They're instead of going further back, they're becoming more and more.
But okay, this is one thing I'll say, and we share a lot of the same point of views and whatever. I'm not going to go into it here because I'll get in trouble, but I think it's actually good if they just become the arbiter.
100%.
Just become the arbiter.
Definitely. 100%.
Just make the rules. Please tell us where the U-turn is. Tell us what the wetsuit temperature is. Stick to it. You're good at it. Very the good. UCI. Make the rules. Put the officials on the pontoon, pat yourself on the back, and that's it. And sell the circuit, guys. Sell it. Please commercialize. If the T100 is a private company, as far as I'm concerned, isn't it?
Yep.
I don't know. I could be wrong.
Yep.
And World Triathlon, assuming they're going to make the rules, is that what they're going to do?
I think so.
Fine. Do that. Do it for short course. Do it for short course.
Yeah. I mean, the only
that's kind of like not the response you wanted to hear. But
no, I love it because I 100% agree. This is again, I've been very vocal about it. But let's use the T100 back to T100. I believe that this year, because of the involvement of World Triathlon, I mean, I'm assuming it's World Triathlon's cool, but all the athletes who are doing long distance have to have their name on the front of the kit. That's a requirement of racing the T100. Now, again, you'll understand, the most prime real estate on an athlete's kit is the front of the kit. So to hear that World Triathlon's we're going to take one of those spots, put your name on it, this thing that actually is irrelevant, because you got numbers and I was just
and you know who someone is, if you're watching the race.
Exactly. And it's not like World Triathlon where they'll wear the same.
Look, at the end of the day, if that's what they want names on tri-suits and country code, fine. You know what I mean? It sounds really weird, but you can have that. You can have the officials, you can have the briefings, but just sell the fucking circuit. And
then let the people who go to the broadcast do the broad. If Super League did do broadcast at the arena,
let the broadcast happen. Let someone else decide the race courses. Let someone else decide. Let someone else sell the blue carpet. Let just bring in private investment, please.
You've actually made it. Yeah, you've put a different spin on that I had not thought of, but you're 100% right. Now, just on this, because again, we're jumping around, but Matt, who commented on our video last week, which I suggest, a bit of clickbait that said, is short course triathlon dying? He said, and I'd love your opinion on this. He said, genuine question. The triathlon world is all obsessed with a season-long narrative at the moment. Cycling doesn't have that and does fine. I don't care where Matthew Van der Poel finishes in the UCI rankings if he explodes the field at Paris-Roubaix. Could short course be saved by monuments, escape from Alcatraz-style iconic races that will encourage iconic performances? Now, this is, for me at least, a complete 180 turn from where I've been very vocal about. I want that season-long narrative. I want to see the same people racing week out. I want to have that F1 style thing. He said this. I was like, fuck, I'd not thought of that. But I also kind of don't hate the idea. What do you think about that approach?
I'm kind of on the fence, I'd say. I like the series. I like the F1 style kind of next stop on the series, . But then on the other hand, I do like the one shot. There is nothing like a one shot. I think Kate and I speak about this often, but like if you want to keep the series champion, keep the series champion, but bring back the 1 day world
Oh,
champ.
mate, I
Like, and
completely
then you
agree
can
with
give
that.
them the rainbow tri suit or whatever you want to
Yep.
give them, But like bring back the 1 day, one shot. You can do a sprint world champ and Olympic distance world champ. And like that's what people will tune into, and
I
make the
really
course
agree with
good,
that.
build it up in the media for weeks. Like bring back the one shot and then have a series champion. So you've got three champions: sprint champ, Olympic champ, series champ. Simple.
Yeah.
Three, or even forget the sprint champ. Just do the one shot champ,
Well,
you
wasn't
know?
it even last year suddenly there was a super sprint world title? And it was just like, oh, this is
Yeah, but like it was marketed like what the hell, Like again, no one knew what was going on. Anyway, but yeah, no, I agree. The monument thing, I said it on Mockery again. I think they need to do this thing where they just go, right, what is good about tennis? What is good about golf? What is good about football? What is good about these big sports? Formula One, they have history. You have monuments, you have Monaco Grand Prix, you have Wimbledon, you have Roland Garros, you have, all these iconic tournaments and races. What is iconic in triathlon? Simple. Nusa, Laguna Phuket, Alcatraz, Umberman, Alpe d'Huez, Gerard May. I'm sure I'm forgetting some, but
I
like,
definitely, yeah, there's heaps.
you know, there's heaps.
Mm.
Just buy them or just collaborate with the organizers. And then you create a story and you can do the fastest time year on year. Thingy has beaten the Noosa course record. Like he's just gone fastest through sector one. Like there's so many ways to do it. And it's just so fucking frustrating. But anyway.
Well, speaking of buying the big races, the next thing I did want to touch on is Super Tri. We saw the Super League Triathlon announce their rebrand. Super Tri is the new refresh. We've still got the series like we had last year. There's more races being added, but a big part of it is that they've added in the mass participation element, which is we know that they've been making moves. They bought the Chicago Triathlon, they bought the New York Triathlon. They did buy the Malibu Triathlon, but we know how well that went. Super Tri, big year this year. Obviously, an event that I know you're very, very keen to participate in, as a lot of the short course guys are. Extended season. I'm not sure if they've actually announced the dates yet, so we probably won't announce them yet either.
No.
But how are you feeling about the Super League, Super Tri season this year?
Sorry, I'll answer this question and then I've got a bolt. But like, yeah, I think it's great. Again, Super Tri, innovating, pushing boundaries. I know the locations and they're expanding to new regions. They're trying new things out. The team concept is going to grow. And I think, they've kind of got to the point where, all right, other entities don't want to work with us. We'll just go our own way. And I think to a certain extent, credit to them, because if you're an investor and you see the sport just kind of not really accepting you 100% and to just double down and be like, nah, we're gonna do it even better. Like I respect that so much, and I'm really grateful for Super League. Like can't say it enough. Every time we race that, you feel like a professional. You're in a team. You're in a group of people that you really like, and you get to know athletes that you never would have known otherwise. And I think the fact that it's expanding, it's brought me so much personally, in the way of sponsorship and connections and network, that I just think it's such a valuable circuit. And to see it grow to new regions, especially, I think that's huge. And yeah, credit to the team there, credit to Maka and Leo and Michael and all the team behind, the driving force behind Super League. And I really, really hope we can, see it expand and create more great racing moments, because, it has from the past.
All right, there you go, guys. That was a good chat I had with Max. Again, I think it's a fascinating time at the moment in the sport of triathlon. It's interesting to talk, because I do think that there is so much going on this year in particular, and yeah, I'm curious to see where the year goes. We've got things kicking off this weekend with the Napier World Cup race, where I believe Mr. Hayden Wild is racing, which I'm looking forward to sort of seeing. But yeah, I think that we are all understanding that there's a lot, I guess, on the line this year in terms of what to expect. And it's there's an overwhelming sense of positivity, I suppose, about all this, but there is like an element of caution, because you know there's a lot, it sort of seems a little bit like there's a lot of eggs in the one basket, even there's multiple races, and we've seen the significant investment a company like the PTO is putting into this T100 series. And I think I guess the reason for the concern that we have is that when you invest in that much money into something, you sort of only probably get a few shots at it. So that's why I think, from myself and from James and from Max and the people that I talk to, we get concerned that if it isn't getting the back in, it's just going to be one of those things that if the stars of the sport, the athletes don't get on board with it, it might not last that long. And again, it is a real difficult position, right? Because you can completely understand why the athletes are going to go and that, Kona is still Kona or Nice is Nice. Like that Ironman world title is so significant. But is it sustainable, right? Like we're seeing that uh, the 70.3 worlds recently has sort of not been as big a deal. And it's not to say it's still an incredible race, but it doesn't seem to get the same excitement that we saw pre-pandemic. And then, we've got this T100 series, and in order for it to hopefully work, you want people to buy in, and then you wonder, yeah, like if people coming out saying that it's going to be just like a warm-up event to the other races, is it going to, sort of really move the needle? Which I personally really hope it doesn't, and think it needs to for the true, moving forward of the professional aspect of the sport, which is something that I personally, care about so much. I know I get a bit vocal about saying that, a lot of the focus is often on the amateurs, and most of you guys who listen are probably amateur triathletes. I can't imagine there's too many people who listen who don't partake in the sport themselves. But a healthy amateur sport doesn't need to be at the detriment of a healthy professional sport, and similarly, a healthy professional sport doesn't need to necessarily negatively impact the PTO, sorry, the amateur experience. I did find it funny. Sam Matt, who commented on, who me and Max discussed his comment about the monument races on the episode this week, was also talking about the big, high budget troll of the Super Triathlon now, an organization that I've been quite vocal about praising for not really focusing too much on the amateur or the age group experience, coming out and saying that the big focus moving forward is going to be mass participation events. And again, I think Super Tri is a wonderful organization who do so much, but I admit I do get a little bit concerned thinking, okay, here's another of the big players who have been solely committed to the broadcast element of the sport, and trying to make triathlon a truly broadcastable product. Going, it's almost wait again, and I'm not sure what it is. I don't have any insight, but it kind of feels like they're waving the white flag a little bit and saying, okay, similar to what we, same thoughts I had when the PTO announced that they were introducing age group racing. Same thoughts, when like, is it a reality that triathlon isn't able to stand on its own 2 feet without the mass participation element? Is there not enough? Is there just simply not enough money in the broadcast and the sponsorship of the professional field to stand it up? Like, do we have to accept that triathlon is not going to be able to exist without that mass participation? Because anybody who's come in and tried to do it, I mean, look, Super League have had a pretty good shot at it, and to say that they've not had an age group element is a fallacy, because there has been amateur experiences and races, mostly corporate, but they've had races that have been for amateurs in the past. So it's not like it's a new thing. But yeah, they've done sort of 7 years, I think, off the top of my head, I can't remember, of their pro series. So to hear that, yeah, there's a big focus on the mass participation is, yeah, I'll admit I'm a little concerned. But again, it's very easy without the full context and seeing things to sort of make those assumptions. But I think, as with most things, it's important to give them the benefit of the doubt and sort of see where they go and how they go with it. So yeah, look, just wanted to jump in, give a few extra little thoughts. Like I said, probably a slightly shorter episode this week, but uh, yeah, it is what it is. Sorry about that. If you want more, obviously head to patreon.com/talking triathlon. That's where you get the bonus monthly show. There's a few there now, I think 5 or 6. Plus the little ones we did over Christmas and stuff. We're doing another one next week. WhatsApp group, Facebook group, all those sort of things. If there's other things you want to do, you can find me on Instagram. I'm at tford14 on Instagram. Jimbo is bale.james85 or bale_james85. So just search James Bale. James has another podcast called Get Out In It. If you want to hear James's sexy voice a little bit more, that's what you can do. You can find this podcast on Instagram at Talking Triathlon. We're on Twitter at Talk Triathlon, and on YouTube. Please, if you are listen to this and you wouldn't mind, occasionally watching, or just jump over the YouTube account and give it a subscribe. We're trying to get that up to 1,000 so we can turn monetization on, which would be cool. Yeah, if you have any thoughts about this week, I'm really enjoying the comments and the discussions we're having with our listeners on YouTube. So it's the easiest sort of forum, I suppose, to have a bit of back and forward. So yeah, if you haven't already, go over to the YouTube account, check it out. As I said, Patreon, all the socials. Yeah, until next week, we'll be back. Thank you guys for listening. Talk to you later.